Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Lynn. Lynn, a survivor of reproductive. Let's try that again. Lynn, a survivor of reproductive coercion, sexual assault, domestic violence, and post separation abuse, addresses the many signs and types of abuse. She highlights reproductive coercion and lesser known forms of abuse by sharing her own experiences. Her words resonate with a call to action, urging survivors to prioritize their own safety, respect, and financial autonomy. Lynn is a paralegal and advocate and hopes to provide a roadmap for listeners to embark on their own journey towards becoming more trauma informed. Welcome, Lynn. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
I'm so glad you're here. Well, I mean, you said you have experience. So, how did you get into sharing your story? Because I know you've publicly shared it. So, tell us why you decided to start sharing your story.
Well, about 2 years ago, I think I got to a point in my recovery
Mhm.
where I finally felt safe
Yeah.
and was with someone, in a relationship with my current husband
Yeah.
who's incredibly, incredibly supportive.
Mhm.
And I kind of felt like, I feel like there's so many women out there who are experiencing all these different things, but a lot of times they can't really put the words to what it is they're
Yeah.
experiencing. It
Yeah.
just feels so off.
Right.
And perhaps they don't have the legal experience or,
Mhm.
even a way to kind of research these things enough to identify properly what they are. And I started realizing that a lot of the things that happened to me
Yeah.
um, in my past were examples of, different types of violence and
Right.
abuse. And that I felt like if I could kind of call out some of the behavior and some of the red flags, that it
Yeah.
could possibly help other survivors realize they're in danger
Hmm.
and to try to get away from their abuser. And also, even if they're not at a point where they can get away, so that they feel less alone.
Right, exactly. That's exactly why I started talking. And also, when I left my marriage, I got a divorce for irreconcilable differences. And then 3 months later, I was like, I was in abuse. I mean, like it all started flooding to me. I had been doing a lot of healing and unraveling a lot of things. And was just like unraveling all these lies. And then I had a name for my pain when I started to understand narcissistic abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, all that. And that's what made me want to share as well. It's like I felt so alone and ashamed. I'm sure other people feel this way as well. So there's just I just felt like I had such power, which I'd never had before. And
Right.
that's how I felt when I started sharing. I'm sure you felt that way. I love that you're talking about that and helping other people not feel alone.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that we even have names for now, reproductive coercion,
Yeah.
narcissistic abuse. If I'm thinking back to 20, 25 years ago when I was entering relationships, I
Yeah.
don't even think that if I would have brought those terms up yet, that anyone would have even recognized them.
Oh,
And
no,
we're still so far away from where we need to be in terms of
for
getting
sure.
justice for those things.
For sure. I mean, definitely. Yeah. And no, that just to me, when I grew up, I'm Gen X. So when I grew up, it's like if you weren't being hit, you weren't being abused. And, we've been societalized as women to be a certain way and be the good girl and do all the quote unquote right things. And then if we're not doing those things and something's wrong with us, like why aren't we doing those things? Especially if somebody is quote unquote providing for you or it's that whole man of the house thing, but then that's what leads into so much of the coercion. And I mean so many things
Right.
there's a lot of reasons, but that's, I think, societally we're taught that in so many ways. I know I was for sure, and that didn't help with as long as I stayed for 3 decades, and it was a lot of it was, I don't want to leave because I thought if only I could just explain myself a little bit better to him, then he'll be nicer, then he'll be he'll understand. Then he'll love me. And that was my deep need. The deep need was to be loved. And so he said he loved me, but if he wasn't showing it, then I needed to keep going and keep trying, which is exhausting for sure. So tell me about why you decided to like, well, you said that you didn't want other people to feel alone. What did you start doing? How did you start sharing your story?
So I typically divide my story into sort of two sections, and it almost feels like two pieces of a very large timeline of my life.
Yeah.
And so the first section is, I'd say, pre-marriage to my ex-husband,
Okay.
which probably encompasses my childhood
Mm.
and my adolescence and when I started dating,
Okay. Yeah.
all the way up until the age of 30 when I married my ex-husband. And I experienced such things as sexual harassment and domestic violence, strangulation, sexual assault,
Yeah.
stalking, reproductive coercion.
Yeah.
And then I have kind of my second part of the timeline where I was also experiencing some of those things in my previous marriage, but it turned into more of that post separation abuse, that
Yeah.
financial abuse, and the systemic failure by the family court to then protect my child.
Right. Talk a little bit about we haven't had a lot of conversation about reproductive coercion or anything like that. But so let's talk a little bit about that and what it looked like for you. And really, I mean, if you have a definition or whatever, but what did it look like for you, and what can we be looking out for? What does that look like?
Sure. So reproduction essentially, I'm sorry, reproductive coercion
Yeah.
essentially is really involves any type of behavior that's
Hmm.
intended to maintain power and control in a relationship related to reproductive health.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds incredibly broad.
Yeah.
So it can encompass a lot of different things. Some of the key aspects of it are birth control sabotage.
Yeah.
So this could include something like a person hiding your birth control pills, poking
Right.
holes in condoms,
Yeah.
removing condoms without consent, which is also
Yeah.
known as stealthing,
Oh, okay. Like right before they take it. Yeah.
right? Or mid act without your knowledge.
Oh, right.
Um, Pregnancy coercion or pressure to
Yeah. Yeah.
maintain a pregnancy, pressure to terminate a pregnancy if you don't want
Yes.
to.
Right.
Um, also controlling their reproductive health, which
Yeah.
sometimes has a lot to do with financial abuse. They can go hand in hand because, let's say, if you're a woman who is not currently working
Right.
and your husband in the home maintains the health insurance,
Yeah.
or is the one that brings home the money. Let's say you're a stay-at-home wife, a stay-at-home mom, you don't have your
Yeah.
own money.
Yeah.
That's going to affect your access to what kind of health choices you can make.
Yeah. I have a friend who was telling me her story, and even things like taking the prenatal vitamins. Okay. This seems very innocuous. Taking the prenatal vitamins, he used that against her. He used that as a form of abuse to like keep it from her and whatever, just because it's all about the control. And it's like, that's so random and it's so innocuous. It's like, it doesn't mean anything in your life. Why is this bothering you? And he would use it against her.
Right. Right.
So hold on one second. We're gonna pause for a second. My son is on his way home. I just happened to see a text and I want to shut the door so he doesn't
Okay.
interrupt us. He wouldn't listen. He's used to me recording, but we might hear the door opening as it might literally the door's right there. So
Okay.
I live in a small condo. Okay.
No worries.
Okay. Okay, we'll go from there. So tell me what your experience was when you were with your ex.
So, well, I'll start by talking about what happened to me when I was really young,
Yeah.
because my first encounter with reproductive coercion, and I didn't even realize that's what it was until many
Okay.
years later, was when I was 20 years old.
Okay.
And so I think many people would say, well, you were legally an adult. Absolutely. You're legally an adult at 12 years old, at 20 years old.
Yeah.
I can tell you from, I can tell you from personal experience and experience, with knowing many 20-year-olds, you are absolutely not an adult at that age.
No, you do not
Um,
have a full brain.
no, you absolutely don't. And not only that, I was still living with my parents.
Yeah.
I was still in college. I was still very much dependent upon my
Right.
parents.
Yeah.
Um, and I was dating a man who was older than I was. He was 27.
Hmm.
And we had dated for a few months. I had seen a few warning signs. Like
Mm,
he was incredibly possessive, incredibly jealous.
okay. Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started.
Right.
But I sort of ignored those things because he always had some sort of excuse, like, well, I just love
Right.
you so much, or you're just
Yes.
so beautiful. I'm afraid someone's going to take you away. And you have no idea what goes through men's minds. So you're not allowed to have any male friends because
Right.
a male friend is just a threat to him. It's a threat to the relationship.
Right. And
So that
tell me how did you feel when he was saying these things to you? Were you feeling like, oh, that's just too much, or did it make you feel good?
it was a mix. It
Yeah.
felt so utterly strange to me. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a naturally analytical person. And
Okay.
so it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at first. But I think when you're naturally that kind of person, where you're experiencing low self-esteem, you're still figuring out who you are in life.
Yeah.
You haven't, like we said, I mean, you haven't really hit full capacity brain power yet.
Right.
You start to believe what other people tell you.
Yes.
And since I had experiences with other men who were dangerous or
Mm,
had, assaulted
right.
me physically, I thought to myself, he's absolutely right. Other men are dangerous.
Yes.
So I need to stay with him because he is the point of safety.
Oh,
So I
that
really
makes so
started
much
to
sense. Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
everything that he said. And I think
Yeah.
this is how abusers get away with so much is
Yeah.
that even when they are abusing you, they're feeding you little bits of truth and little bits of
Right.
manipulation. And so
Right.
it's just a little bit at a time. And so you start to think, well, that sounds completely reasonable.
Right.
He's just worried about me. And really it's coercion on a
Right.
larger level.
Yes.
Um, and so maybe 4 or so months into the relationship, my gynecologist came to me. I had been on the pill since I was 18.
Okay.
And she came to me and she said, hey, you're a young woman on the go. There is this new birth control method, and it's a patch that you stick
Right.
on.
Right.
And so, if you don't want to be bothered with taking the pill every day, I think this is something great for a woman your age.
Hmm.
And I was like, that sounds fantastic. I'm always on
Right.
the go. I'm going from here to there. She's like, you can keep it on while you go to the gym. You can keep it on while you shower. It's great.
Hmm.
So I put it on. I leave for vacation. The minute I hit the ocean, the patch comes off in the water.
Oh no. Oh geez.
And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should have asked about salt water. Maybe
Right.
I should have asked about seawater.
But
I
I mean,
thought,
why would you think
well, why would
that?
I?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's unfortunate. So I come home.
Yeah.
I'm away on vacation for about a week, and I come home and I say to him the night that I return, we have a very big problem here.
Right.
The patch came off in the water, so therefore I have been without these hormones in my body for a full week. I'm clearly not protected. We have to come up with a plan of what we're
Yeah.
going to do.
Yeah.
And so this is one thing that I should have been aware of from the beginning of the relationship is that he wanted to move from using condoms to not using condoms very quickly.
Okay.
And there were many, many excuses on his end for why
Yeah.
that he couldn't maintain an
Yeah.
erection with one on, that he didn't
Right.
like the way it felt.
Right.
And so we were already not using condoms, but we were relying on the pill. So what we eventually came to the agreement to, and I
Yeah.
say that very with like
Right. Yes.
is
He
that
he decided.
he basically said, well, I'll just pull out.
Yeah.
So we both started drinking. We're having fun at this barbecue. We end up alone at the end of the night and we are having sex. And I am reminding him over and over again, a 20-year-old girl reminding
Yeah.
a 27-year-old man
Yeah.
over and over again. Remember, you said you'd pull out. Don't
Right.
forget to pull out. And he's getting more irritated and irritated with
Of
me.
course. Yeah.
And it comes to the conclusion of
Mm-hmm.
the sex, and he does not pull out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel so betrayed.
Yeah.
I'm so extremely angry and I'm terrified.
Of course.
Um, so he says it's just once, it'll probably be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we go through the 2 week wait.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, my period doesn't come.
Oh, geez.
And I take pregnancy test and I am pregnant.
Mm.
And I call him up and I say, the test is positive, and I'm in tears. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of college. I'm about to start a new program. I haven't even gotten my bachelor's degree yet. How am I going to tell
Mm.
my family? What am
Right.
I going to do? Um, and his response, very just with zero emotion, almost like he's on autopilot,
Mhm.
is, well, let's just get married.
Okay. How
Like,
long have you guys been dating at that point?
oh, like 4 months.
Oh my gosh, 4 months. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not long at all.
Really fast. And that's what I always say. It's like the rush with them. That's like they just go, go, go with every little thing. And that's why you feel off balance. You almost don't have time to see the red flags because there's 100 green flags. And then some of the flags aren't even red. They're kind of pink. And it's so fast. And that's why I'm like, we have to slow down or we're not going to be able to see anything.
Right. And that's one thing about these sort of like these toxic personalities, these
Yes.
narcissistic, like coercive people,
Yes.
is that they will rush you into
Yeah.
these incredibly, um, like, of course, I think so many of us are familiar with love bombing at this point, but
Uh-huh.
also there's a huge rush into like the physical. There's
Yes.
such a rush into the physical part of the relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and I, at that age, had never known anyone who wasn't like that.
Okay.
So I don't think it was even until I met my current husband and we got married when I was in my late 30s,
Wow.
that I realized like what it was like to properly date someone
I know.
and genuinely develop feelings for each other and have that kind of like slow burn there
Oh
where you
my gosh.
really get to know each other and you really like it is just on a completely different level. But looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's frightening. So
Yeah.
he really tried to pressure me into keeping the baby.
Okay.
I knew pretty much right away what I needed to do. Like it wasn't an easy decision emotionally for me,
Hmm.
but I knew right away what the decision for me was. I
Yeah.
wasn't ready in any way to become a mother, and
Hmm.
we didn't know each other, he and I, well enough
Right.
to start a family together. And so I was like, I need to terminate this pregnancy. Luckily for me, at that time, I was living in New Jersey,
Hmm.
and this was over 20 years ago, almost
Okay.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
So I had options.
Right.
And what terrifies me about what's been going on the
Yes.
last,
Yeah.
however many years, I think 5 or more years at this point, is this extreme push in these abortion laws.
Right.
And
And
we
that,
are
and we're seeing
denying these
this.
women,
Yes,
right?
exactly. We're seeing that the laws that are being put in place, they don't favor women, and it keeps so many people in abuse like this and having to make because we know that abusers will use this kind of control to keep you and like there it's a real thing. We just haven't talked about it, so I'm so glad that you're here to talk about it. So you had options and you were able to do what you needed to do at that
I had
time.
I had options, and I feel really lucky that I had those
Yeah.
options. Although
Yeah.
to come up with that amount of cash,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I still, even though I had come to that decision, I was still very afraid of my parents at that point. And
Sure.
I really was afraid of what they would think of me. I didn't
Of
want to
course.
disappoint them. So I was
Of
trying to
course.
get this all done without them finding out. So
Yes, of
I was
course.
like, luckily I was a bartender at the time. The place that I had to go to get the termination done only accepted cash.
Oh,
So I
okay.
had to gather up enough cash to get it done, because once I disagreed with what he wanted, he completely pulled all support away, all financial
Okay.
support,
And I
all
was
emotional
wondering,
support.
yeah,
He
I
did
was
not,
wondering what
yeah,
he
he
what
did
he was
not
doing.
pay
Okay.
for the
Right.
procedure. He
Yeah.
did not come with me to the
Right.
procedure. I had to have a friend take me. And the way that it was done in New Jersey in that time, I know every state is a little bit different.
Uh-huh.
You had to go under general anesthesia.
Oh, okay.
So I had to have someone there with me to drop me
Right.
off, be there, and then wait to drive me home.
Yeah.
So I had to have a friend do that. And while we were walking to the clinic, we encountered protesters.
Yeah.
Not many, but a few, and they
Yeah.
were screaming things at me. It was awful. It was
Yeah.
awful. And
Yeah.
he completely left me alone. And then after that point in the relationship, he became uh, even more abusive. Like the
Okay.
abuse had just sort of kicked up into full gear because he was like, well, now,
Yeah.
things didn't go the way I wanted them to.
Mm-hmm.
And so he became even more controlling, more jealous, insulting, just, these like constant picking at me. His family treated me like dirt and he never stood up for me.
Yeah.
You know, he would start to call me names. He would call me a whore. He would call me a slut,
Yeah.
all of these things. And it just went on and on. Um,
I want
and
to
I,
ask you how you were feeling when that was happening, because we don't blame for abuse, and we don't ever ask like, why did you stay? Because that's a silly question to ask. So tell me what was going through your mind. He wasn't supporting you, he didn't show up for you, things like that. Were you having concerns, or were you like really just putting that off to the side, saying, well, it's just not something he wants to do, and kind of dismissing it or talking yourself out of those things? And then when the relationship was going so poorly after, tell me what you were thinking.
so immediately after I had the abortion,
Yeah.
uh, he was so cold and awful to me that I actually broke up with him.
Okay.
And I was able to stay away from him for about 5 or 6 months
Mm-hmm.
until he wormed his way back into my life with
Yeah.
apologies and I'm so sorry. And
Yeah.
it was an accident. I was drunk and I didn't mean it. And all of these things. And there we go. It's the cycle starting up of,
Yes, exactly.
here, let's go into this honeymoon phase again. We would
Yes.
get back together. Things would be okay for a few weeks, then he would start to show his real colors. And
Yes.
we went into this cycle for the next 4 to 5 years of
Wow.
him doing that. I would get so fed up, I would break up with him, and then he would come apologizing, and it would be to the point of stalking a lot
Yeah.
of times.
Wow.
So he would call me in the middle of the night, inebriated. He would call me on the phone and tell me that he had been watching me from outside my house.
Oh my God.
And then at one point, I moved out of my parents' home and I moved
Okay.
into my own apartment with a friend.
Okay.
And she had traveled to Germany for one summer, so she was gone for about 3 months. I finally broke up with him, and I was like, "This is it. This is the end. This is the last time.
Yeah.
We are done for good. I will not go through this cycle with you any longer. I have wasted too many years doing this.
Yeah.
Do not contact me. I changed my number, all of these things." He broke into my house
Oh my gosh.
in the middle of the night,
That's terrifying.
walked into my bedroom. Um, I was completely alone.
Mm.
I woke up. I was startled. I
Yeah.
mean, I woke up. So many things were going through my head. I was initially afraid that he had hurt my dog because it was just me and my dog at home.
Okay.
Luckily, my dog was okay. But yeah, he just sat down on my bed next to me and just said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I just really wanted to talk to you. And I was like, how did you even get in?
Oh my
And
gosh.
he tried to
Terrifying.
convince me that the front door was unlocked.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, it was not. I can tell you that.
Right.
I don't think I've ever left a door unlocked in my life.
Right.
I do not come from one of those families where we leave doors
Yeah.
unlocked. I've been through enough with men where I don't leave doors unlocked.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
he picked the lock and I think he got in. Then in the morning when I woke up, he was gone and he left this incredibly creepy note,
Mm.
handwritten, that said, again, I apologize if I startled you. I just really wanted to watch you sleep.
Oh my gosh. So
And I was
terrifying.
yeah, I felt so strange about it. And I called up a friend. Thankfully, I'm not friends with her anymore.
Okay.
Um, but she, and I told her, I think I need to go to the police. I'm really scared. And I think maybe I need to get a
Okay.
protective order or restraining order or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
She convinced me not to.
Ugh.
because she was dating his brother.
Okay. Oh, geez. Yeah.
And she was like, I don't think the note is really all that threatening. I think it's kind of sweet. And
Okay.
I
So,
sadly, I listened to her and
yeah. So let's announce right now. No, that was
no,
not sweet.
no,
No.
not at all. That is
No.
not sweet. That
No.
is not romantic in any way. I
No.
don't care what you see in any
No.
movie. Um,
Exactly.
but I am so disturbed by some of the ideas of romanticism that they put out in
Yeah.
books
Yeah.
and movies,
Yeah.
especially when they make the man out to be incredibly handsome,
Right.
as if somehow that excuses his
Yeah.
completely creepy and inappropriate behavior.
You're not going to be surprised. Like almost every interview I do, we bring this up because we've been societalized, the fairy tale, the Disney, and that's just like minor stuff, but the saying no to a man and he just keeps pursuing you and then you eventually give in and then it's a love story. It's like, no, don't give in. It's like your boundaries. It's like he should not have to convince you to
Right.
date him. But we're so shown that it's romantic and all that. No, it's not romantic. No, it's
Yeah.
danger.
Yeah. It's
Danger.
terrifying. It's manipulation
It is.
on the most basic level.
Right.
But yeah, and so that was my first experience with reproductive coercion.
Okay.
Um, and what it took me many years to realize is that he wanted me pregnant.
I'm sure. Yeah. To keep you
There was
tied
no
down.
accident. There was
No, of
no,
course not.
he was drunk and whoopsie
Right.
accidentally.
Yeah.
I think any reasonable man and any woman listening to this podcast
Yeah.
will understand that he saw an opportunity
Of
to
course.
control me,
Yeah.
to trap me into a relationship with him. And he thought that once he
Yeah.
got me pregnant, that I would have the baby and that would hold control over me and that I
Right.
would never leave.
Right. And we can see the pattern, right? The way it's like, oh, we're using condoms. Now we're not. And
Mhm.
all those things, right? It just, we see the pattern that led up to that.
Yeah.
And it was, then he saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was
And
super excited that you came home without the patch.
and it happened to me in my marriage later on in life, but in a different way.
Okay.
So when I finally got married, I ended up marrying someone who completely love bombed me.
Mm,
And I think the way that it happened was that I was exiting a very abusive relationship and a relationship that I had in my late 20s, where I was sexually assaulted and
oh, okay.
physically abused and verbally abused and financially controlled. And so I was running away from that person and I found my ex-husband,
Oh,
or maybe I
okay.
should say he found me
Oh,
because
yeah.
he was, looking around on Facebook, found my profile,
Oh,
all these things. And so initially I thought, this is my soulmate. I have
yeah.
finally found the person that I'm meant to be with. And so there were definitely issues from the start. He had addiction issues and still
Okay.
does. So there's gambling, which is an incredibly big issue for me because I grew up with a father who was a compulsive gambler.
Mm,
And my father has been in recovery for many years. My father, I think, just celebrated like 35 years in recovery.
mm,
So my father stopped gambling when I was a kid,
yeah.
but still, it caused a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And a lot of heartbreak in our
Hmm.
home when we were young.
Hmm.
And so that was a very big deal to me when I found out he was a compulsive gambler.
Yeah.
There was medication being abused on his part. He was a chain smoker.
Hmm.
There were just so many things. He couldn't seem to do anything without it being to excess.
And then were you not seeing any of this during the love bombing phase? That this was sort of as you were getting to know him a little bit more?
Yeah, it was almost like I didn't really see it until we had moved in together,
Okay. Yeah.
and then it started to get really concerning. But
Yeah.
we had gotten engaged. I broke off the engagement. I was ready to leave, and then he got down on his knees and he begged me not to go and that
Okay.
he would be better, and that
Yeah.
whole line of bullshit
Yes.
that we listen
Yes.
to
Yes.
every time as women. And in
Yeah.
hindsight, I want to slap my former self in
I
the
know.
face for listening to it, but I did because I loved him. I really genuinely
Of
cared about
course.
him.
And that's the thing. It's like not to shame anybody because we've all done it. And I mean, I didn't say 33 years for fun. It's like I just gave chance after chance after chance because I just thought he was going to change because was saying, I'm so sorry, or whatever it was. I don't know if he really said sorry because I only heard him say that a few times, but there wasn't anything going on with women and things like that. And it was always that there was going to be a difference. And now I know he's just been lying. He was just lying for years and years. Yeah, without a change in behavior, but there's nothing. Those
Right.
words are futile. The
Yeah,
words are hollow, really.
absolutely. We did end up getting back together. We did get married.
Okay.
I will say this, it was a beautiful wedding.
Okay.
We had a very nice wedding. It was small, it was intimate. My family was there. After the wedding, it was maybe a month later, and he was
Okay.
immediately saying, I think that you should, stop taking birth control and we should
Wow.
start trying to have a baby.
Wow.
But at this point, I was in my early 30s. So I thought to myself, well, this doesn't seem all that strange. I mean, we did talk about this. We wanted to have
Yeah.
kids. So
Right.
we started trying. I ran into fertility issues, and I felt like as soon as I was not getting pregnant right away,
Yeah.
he started pulling away.
Wow.
So first, I just was experiencing infertility, and I just couldn't get pregnant, and
Yeah.
they couldn't really tell me what the issue was. Then I started getting pregnant after a couple of years, and I started having recurring miscarriages. And
Oh, okay.
every time I would get pregnant and I would lose a pregnancy, he would pull further away, and he would pull
Interesting.
further away and further away. And I
Yeah.
eventually felt like I was made to feel like I was failing as a
Yeah.
spouse and I was failing as a woman
Right. And almost
because
like you're doing it on purpose when
right.
you're not controlling that.
Eventually, I became pregnant with my daughter. She was
Hmm.
born healthy, and very, very grateful for that.
Yeah.
When I became pregnant with her, I saw a very big shift in his behavior. I had definitely seen red flags before, but this was like a
Okay.
very big shift
Hmm.
to him not coming home from work anymore. He started coming home later and later and later.
Wow.
First it was like 6 o'clock, then it was 7, then it was like 9 o'clock at night, then it was 2 in the morning. And I was like, you don't have a job like
Right.
that.
Right.
Like you code for a living. This is
Right.
something that doesn't require you to
Right.
stay 24. You're not an ER, surgeon.
Yes, exactly.
You're not running off in the middle of the night to save lives. You work on databases, buddy. Like
Right.
you can,
Right.
you don't need to be at work until 2 o'clock in the morning. So he started pulling away more. He had made me these empty promises, like that he would quit smoking.
Hmm.
And he said to me, I promise that I will quit smoking by the time you are 30 weeks. So I hit 30 weeks. And of course, he didn't quit smoking.
Okay.
He was
Yeah.
still smoking up until the day I went into labor. In fact, when I went into labor, he actually exited the hospital so that he could take a smoke break while I was in labor.
Yeah.
And and then was still
God.
smoking after the baby was born. We went to our first, I think it was postnatal appointment, like the first appointment you have with your pediatrician where the baby's like 5 days old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she could smell the cigarette smoke on him. And she
Wow.
was like, you really need to quit for the sake of your wife, for the sake of the baby,
Yeah.
your sake. Stop. You cannot be around that baby. You are exposing that child to like, third degree smoke because you're going and you're
Right.
sitting in a closed garage, you're
Exactly.
smoking
Yeah.
hours on end, and then you're coming in these smoke filled clothes and you're picking up your newborn daughter.
Exactly. I don't think people understand that that's doing that. I want to ask because to me him like not coming home from work and things like that and pulling away every time you had a miscarriage or you couldn't get pregnant is very much like along the lines of the silent treatment, that they use. And did that occur to you then? Does that seem like what was going on now when you think back?
I think so. I think that either, he was in a way abandoning me
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
which is definitely a part of,
Yeah.
reproductive coercion. And it's definitely
Yeah.
an example of abuse. Or I suspect that there may have already been another woman in the
Oh,
in the
okay.
picture on the side.
Yeah. He was
Um,
doing something outside of the home to cope, which was not in any way supporting you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so there was one point, and this is where the reproductive coercion, I think, really comes in. There
Okay.
was one point, I was 2 weeks postpartum.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to go too into
Okay.
my birth. Birth is Giving birth is so traumatic,
It is.
just normally, however you give birth, vaginally, C-section,
Yeah.
however. Um, I I had to push for many hours. The birth was
Mhm.
really long. I
Yeah.
ended up tearing.
Yeah.
I had a second-degree tear, and I couldn't walk up the stairs when I got home from the hospital.
Yeah.
So I had to sleep on my couch on the first floor. And we had the baby nearby. So I was
Yeah.
2 weeks postpartum. I was in incredible pain. And he started pressuring me to get pregnant again.
Oh my God.
And the way that he put it was so disturbing because he said, "When are we going to give her a brother?"
Yeah. And
It
what
was like
did
from the
that seem to,
moment
yeah, did that seem disturbing to you at the time, or were you like, what the hell are you even talking about?
it was so disturbing to me, yet my emotions were so all over the place
Of
because I was,
course.
experiencing lack of sleep. I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to breastfeed for the first time.
Yeah.
I have a newborn baby.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place. And he's already pressuring me. And I'm saying, I wasn't even physically cleared by the doctor yet. And also, I have absolutely no control over what sex children we have. Um,
Exactly.
but I could tell I could was because we had after all of my losses, I had genetic testing done when I was about
Okay.
9 weeks pregnant with my daughter. And that was when we found out that she was a girl. And when I
Okay.
told him that we were having a girl, he looked genuinely disappointed.
Mm, that's so
And it
sad.
started to become more of these comments of like, when are we going to have a boy? When are we going to give her a brother?
Yeah.
When am I going to get my son? And I was just like, what is your obsession, man?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we went through so much to get this beautiful,
Yeah.
perfect baby, and
Yeah.
she is here,
Hmm.
and you're not enjoying any of it. Like,
Yeah.
hold your daughter,
Right.
feed your daughter,
Right.
like hold her for 5 minutes so that I can pee and get a glass of water, like
Right.
anything. And when I started to realize, I think by seeing other people's reactions, was when my daughter was about 3 months old.
Okay.
I felt so completely isolated because my ex-husband was never ever home.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, I'd really like to go join this like postpartum yoga moms recovery thing where you
Yeah.
meet once a week, you just get together, you do a little yoga, but you also just like talk about what it's like
Yeah. Love it.
going through this whole thing. And I looked around the room and I said to all the women in the room, my my husband is really pressuring me to get pregnant with a boy, with a male child. And they looked at me like, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even explain the looks. They were like, some of them were like disgusted.
Yeah.
A one woman actually said, "That is grotesque that
Yeah.
your husband would say that to you.
Yeah.
That is so awful.
It
Like
is.
after all of your losses and after this beautiful little girl,
Right.
it's like we've gone back centuries to why are you not giving me a male heir?"
Yes, exactly. I'm like, this is
you
not
know,
King Henry VIII who's killing off his wives because they're not giving him male heirs.
Oh, it was so absurd. And it just got worse from there. It really did. And we ended up separating when she was 11 months old.
Okay.
That's how
Yeah,
bad it got.
I'm
That
sure.
it culminated in this huge argument. I had the baby in my arms and we were saying stuff back and forth. And then he, threatened to spit on me while I was holding the baby. He screamed curse words into my face while I was nursing her.
Yeah.
And he had his fists clenched,
Yeah.
while standing a few feet away from me, kind of,
Right.
bucking at me. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is it. I
Right.
can't do this anymore.
I mean, they're really showing you, I want to so bad, and when they hit around you, like they might punch the wall near you or they might throw something near you. It's like they want to so bad and they're trying to show you you're next. And
Right.
that's terrifying that it would be with your daughter in your arms. That to me is so disturbing. And it's so sad to me. I like any gender reveal, anything like that. It's always so sad when somebody's disappointed by the reveal. And I'm just like, you guys. Like it's such a miracle. It's like a part of you and outside your body, and it's just amazing. But anyway, when
No, you're absolutely right.
when
You're
someone's
absolutely right.
abusive like that, they're not thinking about that. I don't know if he's wanting a son because there's some deep need. He has some broken relationship with his dad. I don't know. Or maybe that's the way his dad is. And it's like you have to have a male heir, like that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. But I do think about that. And it doesn't excuse any behavior. I'm always just fascinated by the way the brain works, we know that our childhood and our experiences affect how what we do in life and who
Yeah.
we're interacting with. We're filtering all of that through our all of our experiences. I'm sure he was, and he just didn't know how to do it in a healthy way.
Right. I think, that there's something I've been thinking about a whole lot lately, and this is in no way to excuse any kind of abusive
Right.
behavior,
Yeah.
but I think that something that I've realized just at this age is that there are people who are abusive just for the fun of it.
Right.
And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to say whether that is a sociopath or a psychopath.
Right.
But I think that there are also people who victimize because at some point in their life they were victimized or
I
because they felt
totally agree.
powerless.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yep.
I've always found it interesting to watch these documentaries about serial killers. I know that
Yes.
sounds really dark,
No,
but what I
I'm
find so
right down my
fascinating
alley.
about it,
Yeah.
yeah, is the criminology all of it is
Yeah.
in all of it. I find it so fascinating to learn about their childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them
Yeah.
experienced abuse by their parents,
Oh, yeah.
abuse at school, but like relentless bullying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they felt unsure about their sexuality and they felt
Right.
like they could never really be themselves, or they
Mm-hmm.
had this fear of abandonment. And it doesn't excuse any of the bad
No.
things that they've done because at the end of the day, you have a choice to make.
Right.
I've certainly experienced many painful things in my life,
Mhm.
but I
Yes.
never once have turned around and said, well, let me take all that pain and
Mhm.
see if I can make someone else hurt as bad as I do. In
Exactly.
fact, I think my response has been the exact opposite. I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to ever hurt the
Mhm.
way that I've been hurt, ever.
Exactly. And I want to talk about that because I think a lot of women get stuck. I know I did at some point thinking, well, this is a childhood injury he has, so I can help him through it. And it's because of that injury that he's doing X, Y, and Z. But that keeps us stuck and it kept me stuck for a lot of years. But I know that there are women in abuse who are listening that they're stuck because they think that I have to support him and he doesn't really know what he's doing because of this, because of his childhood injury. It's like, no, he knows what he's doing and he has a choice to make because people have said I've been on shows where they're like, well, and they don't know what they're doing, and I'm like, I will no, I will tell you right now, they do know what they're doing because they don't walk through this world abusing everybody. They only walk through this world abusing who they want to abuse. They have the control. And also, he didn't hit you. He stopped himself. It's all these things. I've heard it from somebody. I am also not a psychologist, but I've heard this, and, listening to so many experts that they know what they're doing. And so don't hang on because your spouse has a childhood injury that somehow we're supposed to say, well, if only I could help him with it. No, you can't. That's not
Right.
your responsibility. We have been taught that as women. We have been taught that, but it's not your responsibility. Listen up.
Yeah, absolutely. You cannot change someone that doesn't want to change.
No.
And you could legitimately lose yourself
Yeah.
in the process, and lose your life in the
Correct.
process. It's not worth it.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
not.
So what happened from there with him?
So once we separated, the post-separation abuse started. It was
Okay.
the nonstop harassing text messages, and then attacking me as a person. The financial abuse was a really big one
Wow.
because he had convinced me to stop working,
Okay. Yep.
and that and I had actually been a paralegal for a good 10 years before that
Wow.
baby was born. So I had a career and I
Yeah.
gave it up to
Yeah.
stay at home with her. And I felt so lucky that I got that time
Of
with her. It was
course.
so
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, and then I realized once he left that I had no money of my own,
Yeah.
no money. And he diverted his paycheck out of our joint account. So any money that
Oh,
was coming in, I couldn't get it. I was sitting at home in our marital home that we jointly owned,
yeah.
and I couldn't pay the bills. I had no money to keep the lights on, keep the
Right.
water running, pay the
Yeah.
mortgage. Um, and not only was I left with my daughter, uh, I had two dogs. So it was like
Yeah.
the four of us almost like huddling like in this
Yeah.
house. And so, yeah, but when I finally got to when we first went to the initial hearing, it was like a temporary custody hearing. My daughter was about 12 months old. She was still exclusively breastfed.
Hmm.
The male judge in that county, and I currently reside in in Central Texas.
Okay.
Um, so the judge in that county treated me like a bag of dirt. Um,
Yeah.
my he treated my ex-husband like he was the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
Um, my ex-husband said all of these things on the stand that were not true, that he
Yeah.
had taken care of the baby, that he had bathed her. He had never bathed her
Right.
once in
Right.
the entirety of her entire life, had never bathed that child, and she was a year old.
Yeah. That's sad.
Um, she was also, like I said, exclusively breastfed,
Right.
and that judge awarded that man overnight visitation, weekend overnight visitation. So basically, standard custody
Wow.
of a breastfeeding 12-month-old.
Yeah. That's
It's
horrible.
it's disturbing. I called everyone that
Yeah.
I could think of. I called lawyers. I called La Leche League. I
Yeah.
was like, someone help me. Someone
Right.
help me. I think I even made calls to the World Health Organization. I was like, please, someone, just
Yeah.
someone help me.
We
I
know
couldn't
the
find anyone.
system. We know the system is not set up. The system is not set up for women. It's not set up for mothers. I've heard so many horrible stories, and I'm hoping, praying, crossing my fingers and toes that things will start to take a turn because we cannot continue living in a world like this where there's so much hurt and pain for women.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's both times that I went into court, because I went into court for that custody hearing when she was little. And then we
Yeah.
ended up mediating because I was like, why go back into court if I'm going to be treated like a
Yeah.
dog? If I'm going
Right.
to be treated like the gum on the bottom of, um, someone's shoe,
Right.
this isn't worth it. But then I went back into court because I tried to make a modification when she was, I think the case started when she was around 3 and
Okay.
probably concluded when she was about 5. So it just dragged on and on and on during the pandemic.
Jeez.
It was a complete sham. It was ridiculous. Um, and again, even after switching counties and encountering a female judge the second time, I remember finding we have sort of like a rotating docket.
Okay.
And so you never really know who you're going to get as your
Mhm.
judge until maybe like the Friday before, if you have like a Monday trial.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
once I found out who my judge was, I was online, Googling her, searching her. I
Of
found
course.
out she called herself, like on her ballot webpage, she said, I am a mother, I am a lawyer, I am uh, a former, uh, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. That's how
Interesting.
she described herself. And I was like, great. Someone who will listen to me, a woman of a survivor. She's going to get it. Who would not want to protect their child? How could she not get it?
Yeah.
No, nope.
No.
Again, I was treated like dirt. I was treated. It was. I was treated like everything that I had said was completely unsubstantiated. Everything that he said, whether
Yes.
there was any proof of it or not,
Yeah.
completely believed.
It's so
Um,
frustrating.
it was like a 2-day trial. After that trial, I was so traumatized that I think I am trying to get over it. And
I'm sure.
it's been almost 5 years.
Yeah.
since
I'm
that
not
trial.
surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean,
Yeah, and it probably took me of the first 2 or 3 years to really like I had to dig myself out of
yeah,
like
a dark time.
utter
Yeah,
uh, devastation,
yeah.
financial loss because of all the money that I spent on lawyers. I was punished by the court. I was penalized by the court, and I was forced to pay all of his attorney's expenses because the judge told me that I wasted her time by coming to court. And the most disturbing thing about all of this is that my 4-year-old daughter
Yeah.
was strong enough at 4 years old to make an outcry of abuse against my ex husband.
Wow.
She claimed, and she did not testify at trial, she was too young, but there was a CPS report
Wow.
that stated that she had said that her father had called her stupid and thrown a ball at her head.
Wow.
Um, when she told this to the psychologist that we had her seeing at the time, the psychologist, who is a mandated reporter, by the way,
Yes. Yes.
never reported it, never reported it to CPS. Instead, she went to my ex husband and tried to investigate the issue herself, which is exactly what you are not supposed to
Oh
do.
my gosh, that's
So not only was I
horrible.
failed by the court,
Yeah.
I was failed by this independent psychologist with a PhD.
Yeah.
Um, there are so many people who failed me in this. I feel like I was failed by my lawyer. I
Yeah.
feel like he really didn't care about my case all that much.
Right.
And I feel like he didn't prepare me for what kind of crazy batshit I was walking into. There's no better way to describe it. It's
Right.
batshit.
I
Family
know.
court is a
Yeah.
racket. It's corrupt. It's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
It really is just like flipping a coin in the air to see if whatever judge you get may believe you, may like you, may not like your haircut, your clothes, your
Right.
the tone of your voice, whether you're not you're a woman. We treat these family court judges as if they sit up on this pedestal of
Yeah.
non, having a non-bias. We are all human beings. There
Right.
is a bias in all of us.
Of course. Yes. I
These
do
are
believe
these are
that.
humans. These are not robots where you calculate in this and that and it's going to, AI plug back to you like
Right.
some sort of
Exactly.
like
No,
this
it's
is a
true.
human being with a history.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I think one of the worst things that I experienced was that when I went to my lawyer and I said, I want to talk about the abuse, he told me that I should keep my mouth shut. He was like, don't bring up the abuse. It'll
Yeah.
make things worse if you do.
Right. Because so
So he,
many people, and I know I've told so many people, like, don't say the word narcissist, don't say anything like that. Stick to facts. And it's so, I think they are aware. Well, I don't know, but I just, like you said, everything, it's a racket. It's all these things that it's just not, it's not fair.
yeah,
And it's horrible that we walk in, especially if we've been abused. So I do have some resources on my website. So I don't know if you have any resources of anything like that to help people get through the system. But I do have a few resources on there. I didn't have to do that, thank God. But I also know that I didn't have my own representation and I should have. We kind of did it together because Nevada's 50-50 and we didn't have minor children. We didn't have anything to fight about. I didn't know I was in abuse at the time. And so I just thought everything was fine. Like it's 50-50. Well, no, because there were things that he might have hid money and things like that. It's like, didn't get a chance to do any of that because I didn't know I should.
right, right. I think that goes back to what you brought up earlier is that, as women,
Yeah.
as as wives, as mothers, I think we're taught to try to walk away quietly and be happy with what you get.
Yes.
That's a very, very dangerous
Mhm.
mindset. I can understand why, especially you said that you're Gen Z. I mean, I'm probably like an elder millennial,
Yeah.
the
I'm
eldest.
Gen X. Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Gen X.
sorry, Gen X. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I am probably the oldest of millennials
Of the
possible.
millennials. Yeah.
Yes. But my parents were born in the 40s. And my mom
Right. Yeah.
did not have very many options. I think that she loved my dad, but I think, when she found out that he was, gambling, I don't know if she feel like she had many options. My
Oh, no,
mom
for
worked a little
sure.
bit,
Yeah. I mean, think
but
about it. They
yeah.
didn't have options because not only could you not leave and then you couldn't get a credit card, a home loan, you couldn't get
Mhm.
anything without a husband or a father signing off on something. Yeah, my mom was born in 39, my dad in 41. So yeah, nobody was going to therapy. Nobody was thinking about divorce. And so when people talk about like, oh, my grandma stayed, your grandma didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
grandma didn't have a choice. Whether or not my mom wanted to leave, I have no idea. But that was probably never a thought. And I think that ties into what we've been taught, right? People just stay. You don't give up on the marriage. It was like people stayed because they didn't have choices.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think the way things when things go against women, all these different laws being passed, stuff like that, when things go against women, it's because they know what will happen if we have choices.
Right.
We're good. Well, we're just going to think for ourselves and, make decisions for ourselves. And that's very scary to some people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think they feel like the like society will crumble. Um,
No, it's crumbling now. It'll
yeah,
get
it
better.
just, some of the things that I see and I try to not spend too much time on social media.
Yeah.
Um, but some of the messages that I see coming from young men on there are absolutely disturbing.
So disturbing.
Um, this whole insular type of thinking,
Yeah.
and even the thinking of some women on there, this return
Yeah.
to the trad wife
I know. Right.
trend, and this pick me type of attitude from
Yeah.
women. It's really just so disturbing. And
But then they're going to get caught up in that same thing. And because like I always say, like, there's nothing wrong if that's the life you want. But then when you get stuck in that, and so
right.
many people talk about that, like if you don't have your own money or you don't have access to the money, any of those things, you know, when you have money, you have choices. And because I was a stay-at-home mom for a short period of time,
Mhm.
and I had access to the money. But what would he have done if I was leaving then? Well, I never would have thought to leave at that time. I never would have thought I'm taking my three little kids and going. I just wasn't brave enough at that time. But I think about those moms who like you get talked into it, right? Like you were saying, like, oh yeah, I want you to stay home and I'll take care of you. But if you don't have access to anything, it's dangerous.
It
Then
is
you
really
don't then
dangerous.
you don't have choices anymore and you're going to
Yeah.
get stuck. That's how so many people get stuck. And so I have resources for that as well for people who are stay-at-home moms and want out. There's a lot of people who are doing this work. I don't need to do it. So I have all their resources on there to give people ideas of how to get out and always get out very quietly. Whether
Yeah.
you are in physical abuse or not, do not make plans out loud. Do it very quietly. So,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I the numbers are just to put this out there.
Hmm.
There are certain men's groups,
Yeah.
men's rights groups that have changed the way that family court operates. And
Wow.
that's been a change that's probably been going on since like the late 80s, early 90s. There were these
Wow.
men's groups that kind of came up with this bullshit idea of parental alienation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when there was a protective mother who,
Yeah.
said that they were being abused, or if one of the children said that they were abused and the mother was trying to protect the child, that it, the natural, it's almost like the natural progression of how we think now is
Uh-huh.
that protective mothers are liars,
Right.
that they
Right.
are intentionally, um, deliberately fabricating
Hmm.
abuse,
Yes.
so that they can get custody, just to keep the father away from the child for the hell of it, because Lord knows that makes so much sense, right? Like it's so there are researchers who've really looked into this. And the number, it's hard to know an exact number because you're talking about the distinction between, you know, um, abuse that is unfounded
Right.
and abuse that is, you know, actually not happening at all.
Right.
But for cases that are deliberately fabricated,
Hmm.
researchers are thinking that the number is as low as like 2%.
Wow. Okay.
That is so compelling to me
Right.
because it just further screams to the point protective mothers are not making this up.
Right.
Abused children
Hmm.
are not making this up.
Right.
There
And
are there are plenty of good fathers out there. This is not a conversation to
of
say that all
course.
men are bad,
Nope.
but there are many abusive men out there. And
Hmm.
many of these abusive men are fathers. And many of these abusive men, these abusive fathers, are being given sole custody
Yeah.
of children because the mothers have been strong enough to stand up and try to protect them.
Right. We definitely need change. I'm so glad that you're talking about this and sharing your story to help others, like, see the red flags and to, like you're saying, like we were saying earlier, to advocate and be able to build a future that they want. Um, and hopefully not get into these relationships. I've interviewed multiple people who have been in multiple abusive relationships, and so we just talk about all this kind of stuff, the red flags, what we missed. Um, Especially, it's hard when we're younger because we don't have that um that executive function in the front of our brain to really make critical thinking skills. Um, but it doesn't matter. We can get into these relationships anytime. And I hope that what you said today, well, I know it will. I know it's going to help a lot of people. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. And so will you tell everybody where they can find you if they want to follow along, even though you said you're not on social media all the time?
So the one thing on social media or I guess I should say the two
Okay.
things that I do engage in is I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I can give you the link for that.
Sure.
And people can find me.
Yeah, and we'll put everything in the show notes. So yeah, and you're on LinkedIn and then on
And I'm
Instagram.
also on Instagram.
Okay,
So that's
great.
that's another way to find me. Other than that, I try to keep
Yeah.
sort of a low profile just because of, all of the legal issues. And
Okay.
because my children are still young.
Yeah.
And sadly, I am stuck. I am stuck co-parenting
Oh, I'm so
with
sorry.
with our abuser for
Yeah.
several more years to come.
Yeah.
And so I unfortunately have to make the best of it.
Right.
Um, but I want women out there to know that they are not alone.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that that's going to resonate with people. I'm already thinking of a few people who are going through that right now. And they're going to have to co-parent with their abuser. And it's so disheartening. And we're counting down the days until the kids turn 18 so that they don't have to deal with that ever again.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So maybe they'll reach out to you and see if you can offer any advice for that. I mean, I've put a few things on co-parenting, but I didn't have to do that. So anything that anybody can offer on co-parenting, I will put it on my resource list because I know we need strategies to
Yeah.
deal with these people who are not, we're trying to think logically. They do not think logically. So we have to be really strategic in how we talk to them.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you being here and
Thank you.
sharing your story. So, guys, if anything resonated with you today, will you please reach out to Lynn and, of course, leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. So that way we can keep doing this work and podcast land will know you love us. So, Lynn, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you again.